What's up, party people? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another happy hour. Super excited to be here. It's so funny. I love doing these. I always get so nervous before, but it always works out really great. And once I get into it, it's not so bad. So today we are talking about journaling, one of my favorite topics to talk about. I actually just created a YouTube video last week about how to get started in journaling. So I'll put the link in the comments if you're interested in checking that out. But I was thinking about the types of topics that I wanted to talk about on here specifically. And journaling is one of the ones that has been super powerful and really impactful in my own personal development and growth journey over the last couple of years. Journaling is not something that I did when I was younger. I don't particularly remember doing it when I was very, very young. For me, it really started when I was in college. So like junior, senior year, as I'm getting ready to start my career and I'm thinking about what I want to be doing out in the world and what I'm excited about, what I'm passionate about, I started to use journaling as an outlet. And really, it started for me my junior year when I was interning. I was interning at Ernst & Young, which is a big four professional services firm. I was doing IT audit, and I had been at the internship for about 6 weeks. And we are interviewing somebody from a company. We're auditing the company. We're interviewing this person from the company. And we get to the end of the interview and the guy looks at us and he's like, listen, I don't want to be rude, but I don't know how you guys do this. Like, this is really boring. I was like, you're right. Like, this is incredibly boring. I do not want to be doing this as a full-time career after college, which was big for me at the time, because for me, pretty much leading up to that, I was like, this is it. I've got this internship. I'm going to get a full-time offer, and then I'm going to be done. So it sort of threw me for a loop, big paradigm shift. And I started to think about, okay, well, if this is not the thing that I want to be doing, then what do I want to be doing? And so I started journaling. So I did what I would call like a brain dump journal. So I literally sat down during the course of that internship. I think I was working on this while I was getting paid for this internship, and writing down like, okay, what are all of the things that I know that I like, that I know that I'm interested in? What are all the things that I know that I don't like and that I'm not interested in? And like, what are the environmental factors or situations within projects or workplaces that really speak to me? So like working at a smaller company, working with people who are of, XYZ caliber or whatever it might be. And so I basically started to use journaling as a repository and as a place to start to investigate my own likes and dislikes so that I could get more information and make what felt like a more informed decision about how I wanted to be moving forward, who I wanted to be moving forward, and the type of work that I, really wanted to get involved in. So that was incredibly helpful, because I think the thing that we forget is we can only hold so much information in our brain at one single time. And the great part about journaling is it helps you to lay out your thoughts over a period of time so that you can start to notice and investigate the underlying beliefs or the underlying stories that you have that are actually driving your decisions and driving your thoughts. And without doing that investigative work, we are susceptible to like basically short-term memory loss. You kind of just forget why you're doing things, or you're not present to why you're doing the things that you're doing. And so it was really helpful in doing this brain dump activity because I basically got to sit down and look at all this information that I'd never collected before in one place, and start to look at and say, okay, what are the themes or the patterns inside of this information that I can take note of and learn from and investigate and ask questions about? And what that helped me do was better understand the type of work environment that I wanted to be in. I'm like, I don't want to be in a big company. I want to be at a much smaller company. I want to be at a startup. I want to be, in a, maybe even like a family run company. I want to have a lot more control. I want to have a lot more ownership. I want to work in technology and, I want to work on XYZ things. And so that's really a big part of that. The outcome of that was me then going to work at a startup after school, which was much more aligned with what I wanted to be doing and where I thought I wanted to be, instead of just going, blindly face first into a professional services job that I likely would not have really enjoyed that much anyways. So that was one of the first instances I can remember where journaling really came in handy. I kept journaling throughout the course of my senior year. It's funny. One of the things I'm going to talk about in a little bit is journaling mediums. And I still have the notes inside of my Microsoft OneNote, Evernote pages to look back and just see what I was thinking, what I was going through at the time, which is super interesting. But after college, so after I sort of used it to help me better understand, all right, what do I want to be doing after college? Journaling over the last, let's see, what is it now, 6 years since I graduated school, has been really profound for me, not just from a like decision-making tool, but more along the lines of a healing tool and a building my relationship with myself tool. It's something now that that I do pretty much every day, if not every other day. And has just been super, super impactful. I feel like I can hear myself better. I have a better understanding of myself when I'm journaling. And I feel like I can start to ask myself questions and dig when I'm journaling. So for me, journaling has been huge for the last couple of years. It's also something that I always highly encourage people to get into, regardless of what you're up to, regardless of where you're at, but especially if you're struggling, if you feel stuck, if you feel a little bit lost, journaling is a really powerful place to start. Because in essence, I see journaling as building an avenue to building a relationship with yourself. Because what happens a lot of times is we either are not in touch with ourselves to begin with, or we lose touch with ourselves as we go through life, as we go through middle school, high school, college. The way that you think about the world and the way that you make decisions, I find, is often based on conditioning and messages that you received from other people, like your parents or culture at large, teachers, friends, whatever it might be. So a lot of us are walking around living lives not based on who we truly are or what we really want, but more so based on a set of lessons or stories or scripts that we were given as a kid. And so with journaling, the thing that I really love about journaling is that it's pretty much free. I mean, if you have a phone, you can literally do it on your phone, or it might cost you a pad of paper and a pen or pencil. But it's incredibly inexpensive. There are a ton of resources that you can use to get started and start this dialogue with yourself, start this inquiry with yourself. You can do it pretty much anytime, and you can do it pretty much anywhere. And like I mentioned, I see journaling as an avenue to self-discovery and to rebuilding that relationship with yourself that might not be there or might not be the strongest. Because so much of creating a life that is fulfilling and where we feel present and connected and joyful and loved has to do with how well we know ourselves, how consistently we're bringing the core innate parts of ourselves, those unique parts of ourselves, into our life, into the things that we're doing. Like if you don't know yourself, you couldn't possibly create a life that works for you. You have nothing to work from. You have instructions that were given to you. You have scripts that were given to you by other people. It's not really of your own design. So it's no wonder that so many of us feel stuck, feel unfulfilled, feel unhappy, because we don't know ourselves. Again, you can't build a life that's designed for you, where you really get to show up at your highest and best consistently and do the things that you really love, unless you have that relationship with yourself. You have to know yourself intimately. You can't share parts of yourself with other people that you are not sharing with yourself, or that you don't know about yourself. If you don't know those things, you can't bring them into your life. You can't build them into your life. You can't share them with other people and build that intimacy with other people. So in a lot of ways, your relationship with yourself is at the core of how your life turns out, how your career turns out, how your relationships turn out. So journaling, again, something you can do literally anytime you want, and it's pretty inexpensive, is an incredible place to start rebuilding that relationship. Because I see journaling in a lot of ways as having a conversation with yourself, starting a dialogue with yourself, asking yourself questions, sitting with yourself, being present with yourself. Not something that we usually do, something that we're usually pretty uncomfortable with. I have to remind myself consistently to make time to just sit and be present with myself instead of distracting myself, social media, technology, whatever it is. So journaling, super important, highly recommended, and a really great place to start if you're just looking for answers. If you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like there's something that's just off about your life or about your relationship, plural, and you're just not sure what that is, journaling is a really great place to start that conversation. You can start to take notes. You can start to investigate. You can start to use it as a systematic approach to addressing parts of your life and redesigning it or reinventing it so that it works better for you. I find too, in this conversation around journaling, people ask me like, hey, how do I get started? Or like, I know it's a good thing to do, but I don't necessarily know where to start or how to start. Or I find myself having trouble doing it consistently or with any kind of consistency. So the thing that I always offer people is, well, one, consider that there's no right way to journal. Usually this idea of like, hey, I need to know the right way to go about it, or I need to know how to do it is an excuse or is a story that we're using because we're afraid to start, like we're afraid to see what's there, or we're afraid to commit. And so we'll tell ourselves, I don't really know how to start journaling. It'd be like, I don't know how to start this conversation with this person. Just say hi. Just start to ask questions, just make small talk. It's the same exact thing with journaling. You're, like I mentioned, you're entering into a conversation with yourself, and there's no right way to do that. There's literally just starting. There's literally just pulling out pen and paper or looking at your computer and getting started that way. But if you're looking for a more concrete place to start, I find there are a couple prompts that can be super useful. So one of the prompts that I usually give people is, well, technically it's 3 prompts, but it's a really great place to start with yourself if you're just looking to get started or if you haven't done it before. And it's a set of 3 questions. So the questions are, how has today gone? What do I notice currently about my experience in this present moment? So it's looking at like, what are the thoughts that I have going on in my brain? What am I feeling? What are the emotions that I'm feeling? Do I feel anything in my body? Like, what are the physical sensations that I have going on? And then how do I hope tomorrow goes? And so it's sort of a check-in, like past, present, future, to check in and see if there's anything that's happened in the last 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever it might be, that needs to be addressed. Because sometimes we'll have an experience, but we won't integrate it. We won't digest it. We'll just kind of feel the feelings and then let it happen, which is fine. But I also find that there's a lot of useful information in looking at those kinds of experiences. The second is just getting present to what's what's currently happening inside of my brain, what's currently happening with my feelings. And it's a practice of presence and being present to what's currently happening emotionally in your body with your thoughts is an incredibly useful skill. Because I find that a lot of times what has people end up in life experiences that don't suit them or that feel unfulfilling is a lack of presence. It's a lack of actually listening to what your body is telling you, what your emotions are telling you, what your brain is telling you, what your gut's telling you. So the practice of noticing and being aware of, hey, what's currently happening for me internally, hugely powerful. Because you think about how much more effectively you can make decisions if you're present to what's currently happening. or if you have an emotional experience, being able to sit with it and start to investigate and digest, like, why did this thing happen? Hugely valuable. Same thing with triggers, right? If you get triggered, it's a reactionary behavior and it's pointing to something. If you get triggered by something, there's something there for you to acknowledge or discover or heal that you might not have before. So with that second prompt, that's part of the opportunity, is practicing that presence. And then the third is looking at building this muscle of what would I say? Creation muscle, or like a visioning muscle rather. So looking at, hey, today has gone how it's gone. What's happening right now is happening. How do I want tomorrow to go? How do I want it to be different? Do I want it to be different? And what do I want that to look like? And practicing that, because otherwise, on the opposite end of the spectrum is you're just unconsciously going through day to day and you're just reacting or living in what's already happened. There's not a lot of forward thinking about, well, how do I want things to go differently? How do I want my experience to go differently? How do I want my career to go differently? How do I want my relationships or friendships to go differently? And if you're really committed to and interested in having a different experience of life, creating something different for yourself, improving your life, improving your relationships and your friendships, that practice of defining how you want it to go and creating a vision of how you want it to go is paramount, because that's how things change. You envisioning and getting clear on how you would like something to go is the first step in things going differently. Because otherwise, you just continue to live this reactionary, past-based, I'll just keep doing more of the same thing over and over life. Like, you just continue to extend and prolong the experience that you're having. So that third prompt, that future-based question, is super important. The practice of that is really, really important. So hopefully that's helpful. 3 prompts. How has today gone? What am I present to right now? And thoughts, my feelings, anything in my body physically that I can feel. And then how do I want tomorrow to go? So actually practicing visioning something else. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about potentially some more advanced ways to use journaling. Part of this, and part of the thing that I want to start with, is also just talking about medium. Because if you're looking at building a consistent journaling habit, it's also understanding what medium, pen and paper or computer, is going to work best for you. So for me, my handwriting is terrible. I can barely read it, and I am not a very fast writer with pen and paper. So it feels like I can't get my thoughts out as quickly as I would like to, versus if I'm on a computer and I can type way faster than I can write. So for me, all of my journaling happens on the computer. I just have a giant OneNote document, but you could also use like a Word document. You could use the notes on your computer. You could use Evernote, whatever you want it to be. So like I mentioned, I've been journaling pretty much every day for the last like 3 to 4 years. So I've got pages and pages and pages of stuff that if I wanted to, I could go back and look at it. But all that to say, pick a medium that works for you. Pick a medium that's winnable. So if the idea of like sitting down and writing out handwriting a journal doesn't sound very intriguing or inspiring, just don't do it. Don't do it. Use the computer, and vice versa. If the idea of being, on a computer using technology to journal doesn't sound very exciting or inspiring, don't do that. Sit down, buy a journal. It doesn't even have to. You can literally just use blank sheets of paper, printer paper, if you want to, and start that way. Pick a medium that actually works for you. The other thing that I would encourage you to consider too is picking a time or consistency for journaling. I usually do mine in the morning when I wake up. I don't put a limit on it, and I don't put a minimum on it. Because some days there's really nothing there to address. So I just don't journal much. And there are other days where I'll spend an hour to an hour and a half, because a lot of stuff has happened that week. There's a lot of stuff that I need to work through. There's a lot of stuff that I need to clear and get out and address and acknowledge and own. So it'll take a bit longer. But pick a time that works for you and just consistently for the next 2 weeks, the next 30 days, commit to taking on that practice every day. Because I think that one of the things with habits, and especially with something like journaling, where it can be very uncomfortable, is you have to understand viscerally the impact of starting a new habit before it sticks. So what I mean by that is you have to understand the difference that journaling makes for you energetically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You have to understand the impact that it makes before you can have it sort of run on autopilot, or before that habit is really going to stick. And it just takes time. It takes time. It takes consistency. It takes a prolonged series of repetition and practice to get to that point. And if you quit before then, it's like you've invested all of this energy, but you're not at the point yet where you see the energetic return. So it's not likely to stick. So all that to say, if you are having trouble with consistency, set up some sort of accountability structure that's going to have you take it on for a winnable amount of time. Maybe it's 2 weeks, like I mentioned. Maybe it's 30 days. I think 30 days is great because it's long enough that you see the return, and it's short enough. Anybody can do anything for 30 days. I'm pretty well convinced of that. So pick a time of the day. Pick a length of time, set up a commitment structure, have a friend hold you accountable, do it with a friend, like whatever's going to hold you accountable to taking on that habit and repeating it enough, practicing it enough so that you start to see the return on it. A couple other things to consider with journaling specifically. So like I mentioned, one of the things with journaling is you could use it more as stream of consciousness. So there's this emotional awareness piece that journaling can be really helpful for understanding more specifically and more like the minutia and the like understanding more granularly what's happening with you internally. Because I find most of us walk around, we get triggered, we are reacting to things, but we're not really understanding why we're doing what we're doing. And so with journaling, there's an emotional awareness that you can start to build if you're doing it consistently. And you can start to say, wow, I notice that every time I'm in conversation with this particular person, I get triggered, or like, here's my emotional state, or here's what I'm feeling, or whatever it might be. So using journaling as a vehicle for understanding yourself more emotionally, and underlying all of that is the types of questions that you ask yourself. So whether it's more emotional awareness, whether it's identifying gaps in your own development, whether it's using journaling to create more clarity around what you want, like visioning, a lot of it comes down to what kinds of questions are you asking yourself. So it's looking at outside of the surface level questions around like what happened or who was there. It's looking at the why and the how questions. So if you get triggered by something, it's actually standing back and asking yourself, why did I have that experience? Or what was my part in creating this experience for myself? What can I learn about myself from this particular experience? Another place to look for questions literally could just be online. There's so many resources that have really, really, really great, high quality journal prompts that you could start with. And it's just about picking one and just letting yourself sit with it. I think especially with like visioning too, you could almost imagine somebody sitting across the table from you and is asking you questions. It's like, what are the kinds of questions that you wish people would ask you, or that you wish you were in conversation with people around, your friends or your partner, or whatever it might be. So after you get into the habit of journaling, it's actually looking at, from an intentionality perspective, how do you want to use it? How do you want to use that practice? How do you want to use that process? Is it getting more in touch with your emotions? Is it venting, clearing out the energy that might be stagnant from things that happened last week? Sometimes you'll be in a conversation with someone and they'll say something that pisses you off, annoys you, frustrates you, whatever it might be. and you'll hold on to it for the next week. Like you're holding on to this stagnant energy from something that happened before versus clearing it out, like saying it, taking responsibility for it, taking ownership of it. And journaling can be a really great way to do that, like actually clearing out and venting that energy. But after you've gotten to the habit of it, again, it's about intentionality. What do you want to use it for? How do you want to use it? What are the different ways that you could use this conversation with yourself to make yourself better, to make your life better, to build more awareness around what it is you want and how you want things to go? It's like this opportunity to create a daily check-in with yourself. It's just for you. How's it going? How do you want it to go? What would you like to be different? And then what's there to do from that? So, I hope this was helpful. I'm a huge fan of journaling, obviously. Like I mentioned, do it almost every day. It's been one of the most profound and impactful practices that I've taken on personally, outside of like hiring a coach or investing in other resources or reading books or whatever it is. And again, I love it because it's super easy to do. It really doesn't cost much, if anything. You can do it literally everywhere. And it's one of the best methods and tools for rebuilding that relationship with yourself, which is so incredibly important. Because if you don't have a fully formed, healthy, close, intimate relationship with yourself, it makes it much harder to create the things that you want in your life and feel fulfilled and feel joyful and feel connected. So yeah, happy Wednesday, y'all. Like I mentioned, I am going to be doing these every week on different topics. I don't know what next week's going to be, so we'll just have to figure that out and see what comes up. I also created a YouTube video about journaling, how to start journaling for beginners. I'll drop that in the comments. But if there's any other topics that you're super interested in either asking questions about or hearing more about, would love to hear more about it in the comments. I also got to figure out, I apologize if anybody's been commenting. I got to figure out how to how to see comments live as I'm doing this. But I will figure that out. And yeah, hope you all have a great rest of your Wednesday, great rest of your week, and talk to you soon.